Somewhere in the middle of the two extremes lies a world of open discourse. Probing the depths of the in-between. Welcome to Gray Matters Radio with your host, Michael Devine.
Hello, everybody. Gray Matters Radio, Michael Devine. How are you guys doing? Chris, how you doing today, man?
I'm doing great, buddy. Welcome to the airwaves of the interweb.
I know. God, are you sure about giving me my own show still? I mean, I guess it's kind of too late. We're kind of live, right? I mean,
like there's no taking it back now. It is there for all eternity, Michael. All eternity. At least this little bit until anything stops. It's going to be there. You'll never be able to get rid of it now.
I'm always telling clients, like, this is the first generation where you'll never, ever be able to live down a mistake. So if I totally choke my first time on the radio forever, people can go on, Spreaker or wherever it is that we're being broadcasted, and they can go, wow, Michael Devine really sucked on the radio. So no pressure at all, is there?
Yeah, no, none whatsoever, Michael. Just relax and remember there are millions of people out there on the internet every day that will run across your show.
Wow, I only thought there was maybe like 100. Like, I was thinking this is more like, wow, who's actually, paying attention? But wow, okay.
Like, wow, I really only have 10 people that like me. I didn't know it would do this.
Oh my God! So, if it's like live TV or live radio, or you live just act like you're going to the bathroom and just never come back. I mean, is that proper etiquette? I mean,
as long as you give money to whatever bumper music you're playing. Like throw some Herb Alpert on there or something, a little Spanish flea. We'll be right back.
How would you explain that the next day? Like, here's this new show. We've been, advertising it and talking to people about it. And then Mike goes to the bathroom in the first 5 minutes, never comes back, never
comes back, abandons all, just leaves. Family doesn't hear from him anymore. I would have to say I'm sorry to whoever the fallout came on to. Sorry about that.
I would hope you'd have like a really great story. Like, Mike, what he had to talk about was so important, so powerful. He couldn't even get the first 30 seconds out with the CIA going after him. We don't know what happened to him. He's somewhere in Turkey right now.
He's yet to be found.
He's yet to be found. Never mind his Facebook post. He's totally gone.
He's gone dark other than Facebook.
Well, I do thank you, the HE Universal Network, for giving me this opportunity. This is really exciting. It's really cool sitting here and, actually doing the show. We've been talking about this for several months. We've been talking for about 6 months now, right?
Close to since the first appearance of you on the Dudes and Beer podcast. And you've been on a couple times since, a couple times very recently. And just our conversations aside from shows, things like that, it's one of those, like, before I work with people, I'm very careful as to the relationship to begin with. I'm really one of those manifesting kind of people. I really think that and we covered it on our last episodes of Dudes and Beer, the concept of, what our parents told us when we were kids. You'll be judged by the people you surround yourself with. Yeah. And it's so entirely true in our society today. And just to hear you say that, but also to be somebody who is out there trying to make a difference, trying to be getting people back to a point of empathy instead of entropy. Things like that.
Yeah, and that's like the exciting thing about the opportunity of the show. It was really interesting. I don't even know if I even told you the whole story of reaching out to you. If you talk to my wife, you talk to a lot of my friends, I will say that they know I'm a very passionate, guy, especially when it comes down to politics and what's going on in the world. And I was really struggling there for a little bit. I was really frustrated just the way things were going. And I first attempted just to not watch the news, not talk about politics, not talk about anything. And problem is that when you're a therapist, you can ignore the news, but then every day in your office, you're seeing people, you're hearing people talking about all these problems that are going on in the world. And moreover, I think what was more scary is how it was affecting them. And all of a sudden you go from okay, I'm just not going to listen to any of this stuff. I'm not going to let it, I'm not going to let it get to me to, gosh, every day I have clients talking about the things that are going on in the world and how much it is affecting them. It could be addiction. It could be family members, anxiety, depression. And it's like, okay, like I have to do something about it. And I remember out of a real moment of frustration, Rusty, one of the, Rusty with the Rusty's Therapy Hour on your network. We were colleagues together at a clinic, and I saw him on iHeartRadio, and I reached out to him. I was like, listen, man, what did you do? How did you do it? And he gave me your information. And then literally out of a moment of frustration, I reached out to you, and literally, I remember, being all excited, we're talking about it. And I was like, well, hey, do you want me to send over some clips? You're like, well, I'm going on in about an hour. So let's just do it. So, so I was like, hey, no pressure. 1 hour tryout. Let's go. Let's do it.
Yeah, no, it was a very rapid introduction for both of us. But it was also one of those, I normally don't invite people unless I really feel that. And I could tell just by our conversation that we'd had off air shortly before that you were extraordinarily passionate about what you were talking about. You had your thoughts together. And a lot of that comes from your grounding in therapy, your roots in the field of therapy to begin with. Explain to the audience a little bit about your background in that, what it was that brought you to, I'm going to kind of flip the script here for a second. I know you're the host of the show, but I really, as the owner of the network, want people to understand why it is that you wanted to start this show coming from a background in therapy, especially having written the book Failure to Launch, talking about adolescence, failed adolescence, the new late term as adolescence as it's being called, how all those things kind of relate.
That's an awesome question. I think this inherently, when you go into the field as a therapist, you're going to the field because you want to help people. And for me, that's what a lot of what it was. I remember my mom. She had a rough childhood, and I remember my mom kind of talking about how really how bad it was, but she came out, relatively well adjusted. And I remember I was always amazed at how is it that someone can go through something so awful and come out relatively well adjusted? Top of that, my uncle's a psychologist, and it just seemed like, hey, I want to figure these out. I have a lot of questions I want answered, and it was always about people. My good friend Andy, who will actually be on the show here a little bit later.
Yep.
I remember one summer I was kind of messing around, not really doing much of anything. I myself was a failure to launch kid. I was more, I think, just interested in going out, partying, and having fun with my friends. And it was over the summer one year. I was at a graduation party at a friend, and I remember we were talking about politics and society and whatever, and he turned around and looked at me, and he was like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? You're like the dumbest smart kid that I know." He goes, "What are you gonna do? Like, what are you gonna be at the Filler talking about like quantum mechanics or something?" And Filler was like a little bar in Columbus.
Sure.
And for whatever reason, it just hit me all of a sudden. I tried thinking about how I was gonna get to where it is that I want, and doing what I was doing, and then all of a sudden it was like, you know what? I have to do something about this. I gotta be. This is what my brain keeps telling me to go to. And so, okay, well, let's do this. Uncle Larry's a psychologist. I'm going to be one. And so just that passion, I think right then was just about asking questions. And I do think about being a therapist for so long, you hear about burnout. And I don't think necessarily I was burnt out about being a therapist. I love what I do. But I think I was starting to get frustrated with the impact that I was having. I loved working with people one-on-one. The way I kind of rationalized it to myself was, hey, you know what? My way of changing the world will be one person at a time. So maybe it's not me changing and I'm helping the next person that's going to do it. But life sometimes has its own plans. I think in the last, 6 years, 8 years, just as a clinician, it's been interesting seeing how much the world has changed and seeing how much that changing world is. I mean, in a lot of positive ways have helped things, but also in a lot of really negative ways, it's begun affecting people. And then all of a sudden, you take someone like me who poli-sci was a minor and loving politics and just not being able to shut their brain off of looking at everything that was going on. It wasn't, I couldn't be satisfied anymore with just one-on-one. And so it literally, that's, I think, once again, why I reached out to you that day was out of the whole pure frustration out of just what was happening in the world and sick of seeing it was I got to do something about it. And the rest is basically history. If you ask my wife, about the conversations we had, the one thing that she told me, and this is something that I look at, it's my core DNA. These are conversations you and I have had, Chris. She kidded me, she goes, if you're going to do this, don't do it to become famous. Don't do it just to make money. Don't do it for ego. I'll sign off on this. I'll be cool with this because if this thing goes where we all want it to go, okay, like it might be some game changing, changes in your life, but do it because that you genuinely want to make a difference. And this is the only route to be able to go and do that. And that's where I look at when we were developing the content for this show. Too many times, it's so easy. When I was out doing the Trump rally for the Dudes and Beer show, there were so many opportunities where I could have asked gotcha questions. Oh, yeah. I could have asked something that could be great radio, right? And that's where, and I think we're all centered by certain things in our life. Sometimes it's family, it's faith. I kept thinking about, no, this is about humanizing people. Yeah, this is about, and there's a story to tell here. And what the most amazing thing was, Chris, when I just started talking to people, and I'm a pretty neutral, independent guy. I mean, I'm probably about as purple and independent as you can get. It was just amazing that when I started talking to people, hey, what do you believe and why? What brings you here? People just started wanting to talk. I mean, I literally couldn't get through an interview before someone else was like, hey, I want to say my word. And then all of a sudden it started really dawning on me. And I would really say that when I started thinking about the show, I had one idea. It was that moment where I realized the show could be something so much more. Yeah. And it's about people are not feeling heard. People are not feeling like they matter to anybody. And then just when somebody just asks them a simple question, it's amazing the response that you get. And even the experiment that we did that night on the show, the game that we played, and even you were stumped by a couple of them. Yeah. Where I took a random snippet and said, okay, let's judge people by just one thing you hear. Is this a Trump supporter or non-Trump supporter? And you did the interviews. Yeah. And even got lost among the process. And think about how powerful that is, where I was doing the interviews, and based upon what people are saying, I couldn't really 100% tell. Yeah. And think about where we're at as a country right now, to where things can be misconstrued or so just bastardized in one way or the other, put through some filter. And that's what I think is happening. And some people are talking about fake news or I'm not being heard. What we're talking about, this epidemic of people not being heard, people being misconstrued for someone else's gain, and people are sick of it. People are kind of angry. And that's why I think we're starting to see some of these things that we are. And so that's the whole point of the show. The whole point of the show is to realize that we love this country. Everything I have, and I'm sure, Chris, I'm sure you feel the same way. Everything I have is because of the values of this country. Yeah. And I think we all, when we talk about patriotism, it isn't about waving a flag. It's not about, showing what clothes you're wearing. It's not about what party no, it's about you really, truly appreciate what this country stands for. And people want to defend that. People really care a lot about it. The problem is that passion, and then you tie on top of that people feel like they're not being heard, they don't matter, they're being taken advantage of. People are taking that and twisting it and then turning us on each other. And it's making it to where we are each the enemy. And when you're the enemy, you are dehumanized. The things that you say and do not matter at all anymore. And each party is 100% guilty of that. They're just doing it in radically different ways. And this show is about, let's humanize each other again. Everybody's opinions matter. Let's actually get down to asking regular people what they believe about things. Let's talk about how things are affecting them. Let's talk to people instead of going, let's say we're talking about healthcare. Instead of talking to this pundit or this lobbyist for some healthcare association, why don't we talk with someone that's actually worked in healthcare 30 years? If we're talking about, let's say, immigration, why don't we talk to someone that's actually been working immigration for 30 years? Someone that has nothing to gain but aside from just giving their 2 cents, their experiences, their feedback. Let them feel heard again, and let's start having a debate again about what are the solutions that we need to come to in this country. And so that's what I am hoping that this show kind of becomes. And probably what it will start off at will be different than what it will become. But this is at least, to me, I think, a great starting point. And I think why you're entrusting me and giving me this platform to attempt to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Because it's something that after my time in broadcast, I became acutely aware of. After going to school for psychology, spending years studying subliminal psychology, sociology, things like that, I just see it as raging red flags everywhere I go. And I kind of feel for a lot of people that haven't had that education, that don't know those signs, that don't know exactly what's going on and how you can filter that information, how you can actively, I guess, deprogram yourself on the daily is really the only way I can put it. And same thing with our children, to be able to give them a filter through which to put all of this information and data through so that it's not skewed to one side or the other.
And that's what's interesting. I'm curious because how long have you been in radio for, Chris?
Oh, geez. I guess about 15 years now. I've done broadcast in some way, shape, or form.
I mean, and the thing is, I always think it's really interesting. One of my favorite conversations that I have with clients and families that I work with is you get to actually talk about what their lives are like, whether if they're in a business. So that's why I love doing family business advising. You get to hear about their story, their businesses, the story that maybe you don't hear on TV or what have you. And, and you learn so much more, I think, by listening. And, you've been involved in radio for 15 years. And for you, what have you seen change with radio? And you've had some interesting stories that we've talked about off air. What have you seen really change over the last 15 years? And not just from a listener perspective, but actually being behind the microphone, the production booth, of what's actually changed? Because it seems the last 15 years, there's been a steady shift in one direction.
Well, my time in broadcast has covered a large scope of things. So for me, I guess the main thing that I've seen change is the lack of waiting for fact. Used to be, it would be wait, before we run that headline, before we put out a breaking news, let's get this verified a few places. There is no more real chase for fact. It's the chase for the headline. It's the chase for that, like we've talked about on Dudes and Beer before. It's the chase for that dopamine fix. And to use that tactic, to use that truly subliminal tactic, of using your brain's chemistry against you, using your brain's fight or flight mechanism against you, that on any side of the spectrum that I've worked on has made me really not want to go back to a lot of broadcast, and to keep doing what I'm doing. Because either side of the spectrum that you're working, the idea is to skew the light from the other side of the spectrum.
Well, and how conscious?
There is no white light in media, unfortunately.
Well, and that's the thing. How conscious of a thought it is, because I think once again it's easy on the outside, and this is once again you're going to notice a recurring theme in our shows is on the outside looking in what something looks like, and a lot of times we're never going to know because we're not on the inside. All we can go off is the little bits of evidence we can kind of pull together. But with you being on the inside, I think it's important for us to set the stage of, is this something that's malicious? Is this something that almost sociopathic of, okay, we're going to purposely do this, even though we know it might mess you up, but we know we need ratings? Or is it one of those things of, well, it works, it's ratings, and then we go one step further, and then we go one step further. So is it a very conscious decision, or is it just kind of happened and no one really sees how bad it is anymore?
Well, and, I think a really prime example and way to look at it, number one, is, believe it or not, soap operas. Soap operas, number one, are one of the greatest form of escapism TV shows that there ever has been. It goes beyond the realm of sitcom. It goes into the world of, like, here is a saga of families and neighborhoods and towns that go on for years, like 20, 30 years in scope. And they've literally gotten to the point now where there is premium advertising where they will drop your product into their show.
Wow.
Like, they're preparing for an awards ceremony. Great, let's get the bags together. Oh, what's that you're putting in the bag? Oh, this is Joe Marie's face cream. And they hold it up next to him and kind of pose like, oh, really? Wow, that looks great. What's it all about? And they talk about, like, this is live in the middle of the show. And then later they cut to commercial.
Has anyone? And honestly, you've been on those production meetings. Has anyone ever spoken up in a production meeting, going, "Hey, maybe that's not really responsible, guys," or "Hey, maybe we should check"? Maybe I'm being naive because I'm new to radio, but does that even happen, or is it like, nah,
well, dude? It is something that even as the owner of a network, whenever people like yourself, when you approached me, what was the first question I asked you? Do you want to make money with this, or do you want to just have a show? They are both perfectly viable answers to a perfectly viable question. I'm just trying to figure out, as somebody who's marketing a show, are we looking at a show that needs to be crafted to where we're looking for a realm of sponsorship? Or is it something that it's no holds barred because we don't care about sponsors? We really don't. We aren't going to be trying to get Dollar Shave Club on board, so I really don't care what you say.
What's wrong with Dollar Shave Club? It
nothing,
could be
absolutely not.
If you would like hell of a product,
if you would like Dollar Shave Club because you are a well-trimmed man, if you would like Dollar Shave Club as a sponsor, we will go for Dollar Shave Club as a sponsor for you. But it's also one of those like, hey, if you want a show that you can do absolutely anything with, and it's not like, hey, you're going to lose sponsors, or the network's going to lose sponsors because, other shows are sponsored by them and you're doing this, So it is one of those, even in today's society, it's hard, even with Dudes and Beer, the fact that it's an open conversation, not to have the conversation with people the first time of, hey, just so you know, I don't edit anything out. If you say something offensive or horrible, yeah, you just did that.
No going back.
Like, that's out on the interwebs now, dude. I'm sorry. Learn to think before you speak. But
that is a challenge, though, of, it's like when you're sitting there, because I think like one of the big reasons why I was more attracted to radio was that, like, for the last, probably 2 years, I was trying to really shop a book. I was calling it, I think the working title I had was Collateral Damage, because I had this working theory, basically, not really theory, it was just fact, I think, that a lot of the addiction problems, a lot of the suicide issues, anxiety, depression, all these problems that we're having, it doesn't really matter how much money we throw at the problems keep getting worse. And what I was writing a book was a challenge that, okay, maybe, addiction and all these problems are merely just the collateral damage of the world and society that we've built up around each other. And after finally getting shot down a bunch of times, I kind of asked my agent, I was like, okay, like, what gives? And she said, Michael, it's like this. It's who wants to read a book that they're the problem? I mean, really, who's going to read a book that, hey, by the way, we've screwed the world. All these problems are kind of our fault. We're enabling it. we could probably stop it, but it's not a very feel-good book, Michael. It's kind of morose and kind of, no one's going to want to read that. And so because no one's going to read it, no one's going to want to publish it. And I remember being dejected, going, okay, here's the biggest problem of literally what I believe is our time of generations and generations of kids that we are losing, even adults. Yet no one wants to talk about it because who wants to hear that they're the problem? And there's nothing more frustrating than being in the trenches, seeing like the canary in the coal mine, seeing all these problems and being told no one's going to want to hear about that. And it just makes you get kind of hopeless that, okay, there's nothing course correcting that. But here's the awesome thing, though. When you start having conversations with people outside of that realm, like when you and I were talking, you're like, dude, no, that's totally right. I mean, really aligned with what I was trying to get at. I mean, literally just yesterday, we were getting photos for, fall, Christmas, family photos. And literally we were just, just talking about just, what we do. And literally we had this, like 40-minute conversation with a photographer about the show and what's wrong. And everyone you talk to about this idea of this show, people will start engaging you. Doesn't matter, Democrat,
they're
Republican,
excited.
Gay, straight,
they're
black,
excited.
whatever. They're like, and that's the amazing thing of that. What cuts through all the BS of political parties and media is people going, "That is it. I feel the same way." I put a challenge, and I apologize to all my Facebook friends. I've been using you guys for information. One just because it's hilarious.
Wait. You've been gathering big data on Facebook without people's permission?
Well, I mean, big is maybe an over. I was just gonna say
an overreach.
I was just gonna say, it's for the greater good, Chris. But you word it like that.
It's metrics. It's metrics. It's totally different.
That's what happens. You think you're doing it for good, and next thing you know, like you're part of the problem.
It's just metrics. It's not even metadata. It's not even metadata.
I try to help the world, and then in my attempt to help the world, I screw it up even before I finished my first show. Damn it!
Way to
Sorry,
bring
guys.
more awareness to the machine.
Thank you, everybody.
I'm just playing.
I gotta go to the bathroom. I'll be back. But no. So I started asking people. Hey, so some of the questions I was asking people was, hey, how does the current political, and media landscape affect you or your family? And what was amazing, it didn't matter if you were Democrat or Republican. People started telling very personal stories of there are friendships that they can't have anymore. There literally are people that they just don't talk to. That's something that Andy Leatherman will be talking about here shortly, about the effects that it has on friend groups, family. I had even clinicians talking about what they're seeing in their practice, and they're all kind of preaching the same thing. We're all seeing it. I even had people in Europe and in England, clinicians telling me that it may be different than the reasons our political landscape, but they said they're seeing the same anxieties with Brexit what's going. And you see this. It's amazing that all these people were all responding, but then the frustrating part, though, is that you see what we're all primed for, where literally you have one person talking about how frustrated they are with this landscape and how they feel like they can't talk to anybody and that people are judging them for who they like or who they don't like. But then before they can even get to the end of their comment, somebody's coming in and bringing up like, well, you did this 5 years ago, or, well, that's hypocritical. You're doing this. And what I've started doing is stopping people and going, hey, listen, what's your point? Not like from a being a dick perspective, but if trying to get people to really think about, so if you're posting this meme saying, well, if you don't believe this, shut up, or making fun of something, well, what really is your point of doing that? You're obviously posting it because you're passionate, right? But what do we really think it's doing to the other side? If your goal is to anger people, to push them further away, to create a dialogue of conflict, well, then keep doing what it is that you are. But the funny thing is that's not people's intention. And when I've stopped those conversations, mysteriously, there's no more dialogue. There's not a 57 comment reply to one. And I'm like, wow, if we can do this like on if we can take what the media and the politicians have used social media to turn people against each other, and frankly rather quickly, can we do the same thing in the opposite direction? Maybe we need to be the big kids in the room and go, listen, if you guys aren't going to look out for our best interest, and you guys are not going to change this debate, we can change it ourselves. We have the power to not engage in what you're trying to get us to engage in. And it made me hopeful that, okay, there is some hope here. There is some chances here to really make some big change on a rather kind of quick scale. And it's just amazing. And you've been doing Dudes and Beer a lot longer than I've been doing any of this. And are you seeing some of that same dynamic? We've had some really good discussions on Dudes and Beer, and we've been amazed even at some of the interactions we've seen about some of the topics we covered.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely changed over the last few years, especially people's interaction with posts. I think people have really finally started to get a good grasp of why we're trying to do what we do. Our level of guests has bumped up incredibly, and it really is the fact of it takes a while sometimes for that kind of traction to get there, for that kind of organic growth to happen. And to see the interaction that we have now, to see the back and forth between people, it's great. There isn't a lot of name calling on our comments and things like that. It's fantastic. Whereas years ago there was, and it's like, I wouldn't stand for it. I'd kick people off. I'd take people off. Hey, stop that. That pointing a finger in somebody's chest is no way to talk.
And that's the interesting thing, I think, as a clinician, and it's funny because, being a fan of politics, I can appreciate tactics and strategy. You mean every bit of everything everybody does is some form of manipulation. Let's be honest, right? Yeah. And so I'm not being naive here and going, okay, you're not going to have to kind of do some things here to try to get people to like you or vote for you or watch your show. I get that. But I guess the thing that I get frustrated, kind of with and wondering why we're some of the only people talking about this is that when I ask people, what are the positives of the environment that you're seeing in your life? I'm talking about positive effects versus the negative effects. Some of the overwhelming sentiment I get is it was tough to come up with positives. Sometimes people are saying that you're getting more young people involved. You get more people a little bit more passionate about what they believe. Almost a return to kind of a grassroots activism. But what you're also getting a lot of people saying is that whatever positives they get, it's almost like a negative. It's like, well, things are so messed up. Maybe it's waking people up that maybe we need to make some radical kind of changes and meet our voices heard. But
good God, you had somebody like Alec Baldwin come out today and say it's time to overthrow our government.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny is all of a few years ago, you had people saying it's time to overthrow our government, and people like Alec Baldwin were calling them stir-pot crazy.
That's the thing. We're literally. I was watching a documentary, my wife and I, on the Bloods and the Crips, and literally,
hey, kettle pot, nice to meet you.
Literally, it's like you get this element of, and this is where I think it's frustrating because literally when you see with Bloods and the Crips, it was like, well, you killed my guy, now I'm going to kill 2 of your guys. Well, you killed 2 of my guys, now I'm going to kill 4 of your guys. You killed 4 now. Well, you killed my guy with this, now I'm going to go after you with this. It's like, you see this escalation and everyone justifies what they're doing. And that's the dynamic that you're seeing right now. It doesn't matter who is in the office right now. Each side is doing things. They'll justify, well, they did this to us. And then the next side takes over, well, you did this to us. Think about the whole, I'm just going to pick a stopping point because you have to sit there and realize that every single time you're going to stop with something, you're going to be like, well, what about 4 years ago before that? So I'm just going to, not because I'm Democrat, Republican, I'm just going to pick a stop of Merrick Garland. So Merrick Garland, all right, so let's be honest. The Republicans totally outplayed the Democrats. They had no answer for them obstructing Merrick Garland. And regardless of whether or not you're Democrat, Republican, you have to admire their tactic that they kind of used, right? But then it's interesting then, it's like when I saw that and I heard that, I was sitting there going, oh, shit, this thing is going to, like, what's going to happen when Trump is going to try to nominate his Supreme Court person, right? You just knew it was going to incite Democrats. So they go, you obstructed us. Well, now we're going to obstruct you. And we saw the result with Kavanaugh, right? But then you have this whole dynamic, of Mitch McConnell. And I'm not saying I like the guy, but you have to admire the balls on the dude. Where literally they were asking him about, like, just everything. And one, he's totally blaming Democrats. Well, basically playing the whole card of, well, because he has that weird kind of, like he has marbles. Well, you see, he's basically saying, like, I don't understand. Like, there's a lot of, the Democrats basically obstructed us. I don't understand why they're doing that. They're for long, short, they're bad guys. They didn't know how to do anything, so they're just going to obstruct and everything. And then when the reporter kind of casually brought up, the whole idea of Merrick Garland, he kind of goes in this whole thing. Well, it was the spirit of the time ever since going back 200 years or however many years he went back. This is how they've always done it. If there's going to be an election and you're in a minority, well, then, this is just what you did, right? But then they asked him, so what happens in 2020 if you guys lose the House and Trump's up for election? Well, we'll talk about that then. Totally punting the football, basically going, everything I just said is total bullshit. It was complete politics and almost doing it on purpose. But then it's like, what do you think that's going to do to Democrats? Well, then that's going to incite them. Then they're going to play for keeps, right? And then at what point does it stop? At what point do you get somebody to sit there and go, all right, gang, so are we playing just to get elected? Because that's what it seems like to me. I mean, I don't know if anyone out there listening has any way of rationalizing it to me, but it seems like both sides are only playing to get elected, but their means to get elected create more division, so it has nothing to do with actually governing. And that's really, is it our responsibility, Chris, in media and having listeners to go, maybe we should demand more from our elected officials.
It's not just that. I think I really think it's more the fact that the onus is upon us to pump the brakes and actively take a step back and look at things. Which is exactly why you started this show. Is for that exact reason. That's why I couldn't not give you a show. I couldn't not enable you. Otherwise, it just kind of shows my whole mission is a fallacy. And good Lord knows I'm egotistical to say that ain't going to happen.
you
Last thing I'm going to do is say I'm wrong 4 years in, 3 years in.
And I think that's where we have to ask ourselves a really important question as Americans is, what is our responsibility to change the dynamic? I think, remember Jack Abramoff? He was on a radio show and he was talking about how we didn't think we were doing anything wrong because everybody was doing it. And why would they change? Yeah. If everybody is doing it and it works out for them, why would they change? And it's a moment of honesty and levity from someone who went to jail for corruption, basically laying out like, all right, they're not going to change, folks. And what scares me is that when we start seeing, like, on the news, I mean, when we look at, and this is stuff that scares me, is that when we look, if you go on our Gray Matters Radio Facebook page, you'll see a lot of these articles of, you'll have Antifa protesters going up against a Patriot people, and then they'll get into a brawl. Or you saw in New York, a bunch of Proud Boys, beat the crap out of a bunch of Antifa people. Or you'll see a bunch of, it's like you get the sense of, are they just now trying to scare people? Rand Paul's wife the other day was saying that she sleeps with a gun because she fears a Democrat is going to basically break into her house. You see it even with the Kavanaugh vote. It didn't matter what side you voted for. If you voted for Kavanaugh, the far left went after you. If you voted against him, the far right kind of went after you.
Mobs of people were actively banging on the walls.
Yeah.
And the doors trying to get in.
And that's where you start getting a sense of, are people so frustrated, so lost, so angry that the only thing that they think they can do now is I'm just going to make people scared. That if you vote this way or you don't hear my voice, I'm going to kick your ass, basically. I'm going to kill you, and I'm going to go after your family. And how far is too far? Is it when, I mean, we've already had one congressman shot at. Is it going to take a president? Is it going to take Kavanaugh? Is it going to take, I mean, really, what is it going to take for people to realize that we have gone way over the reservation? And do we have to let someone get killed or shot again? Do we have to lose an entire generation of people before we finally step up and go, maybe we need to say something? That's why, like, my challenge, one of the big things, and I kind of posted this on our Gray Matters website, is that I think as a mental health field, I think we failed. And it may not be a popular thing that I'm saying, but I think we have failed, you know, or a dereliction of duty, maybe. I don't know what the best word is.
How so?
I think where we failed is that we've allowed ourselves to get brought into this debate of, you know, almost like the soap opera. I have a lot of colleagues that are clinicians. I've been going around and really paying attention to the counselor and clinician, psychologist, psychiatrist websites. And everyone is just sitting there talking about the drama, the soap opera, as you said earlier. Is Trump a sociopath? Is he a narcissist? Do we think women shouldn't have a voice? Should men not have a voice? I mean, going into all this BS about, you know, testimony and what people remember. And it's like, guys, why are we allowing ourselves to be sucked into it? And then mysteriously, when I ask people, hey, what are you seeing in your practices? All of a sudden, we're not talking about the soap opera anymore. What we're talking about is, you know what? I see people scared. I have never seen people come into my office after an election fearing the world's going to end. I've never seen people that were kind of bordering maybe on mental stability talking about, I have to take action. Think about what was it, the Boston Globe, where a guy went and tried to shoot up the Boston Globe saying, you guys are enemies of the state. When we see people taking actions in our hand, going and shooting a Republican congressman, that's the thing where we're not having that discussion. I liken it to, remember in Star Trek when Captain Kirk would ask Scotty to like push it, basically. He's like, Captain, you know, she's already going as fast as she can. She can't take anymore. She's breaking up. That's what I feel as though is our country. These incidents that are happening, people that are normally maybe very on that fringe, people that are very kind of almost tightly wound, but maybe they weren't doing anything but just saying it. I think what's happening is that things have gotten so rough that now we're pushing those people into action. I don't think when people are going, Donald Trump is trying to do this, or when Hillary Clinton is going, well, we you know, if they go, was it Eric Holder said, well, when they go low, we kick a mother down, or something along this line. It's like, I don't think they mean that. But the reality is there's people in this country who don't know the difference between the two. And we're using it as a tool to rally a base. But the problem is we're rallying and scaring and people that really don't know the difference. And this is what we need to be talking about as clinicians, where we need to be reflecting back to our congressmen. We need to be reflecting back to the media and going, listen, this is what we're seeing in our practice. Things we did not see 8 years ago. And this is the damage and this is the problems that we see it causing people. I mean, literally every one of us has a story. I mean, Chris, like, what is like, I mean, with all your friend group and family, what is like one like big thing that stood out to you is how the current climate over the last 8 years, we've seen a very drastic negative effect?
You know, I've seen it more amongst friends than I have amongst family. And I'm not going to say that it doesn't exist in my family, but my family doesn't do a lot of politic talking whenever they get together. They do a lot of talking about other things, but they don't really go into a lot of politics typically. But amongst my friends, people I went to college with, people who like I said, went to college with, we read the same books. And everybody reads a book a different way. Everybody gets a different interpretation of a book. To think about it that way is one thing, but to see the absolute rejection of another person's interpretation of the same book. That's what I don't seem to get. And that's quite honestly what I'm starting to see is people that amongst my friends on social media, friends I went to high school with, friends I went to college with, things like that, where it's like, no, I can't hang out with that person because of this.
And think about, did you ever see that before?
There was some old school quibbling. There was some, old school stuff, where if it was like, I'd seen maybe some of it, but not to the extent that I see now.
And that's the biggest thing that's changed. I mean, it's not even just with families. How many times? I mean, literally in the last 2 weeks. I mean, I know I've posted a lot of them. How many stories have we heard about people saying something and doing something out of politics that ended up getting fired from their job?
Oh God, yeah. No, I mean we post them. I post one at least every other week where it's some kind of major story, where somebody gets fired for posting something or putting something online or sharing something in the wrong way.
And it's just insane, and that's, and this is probably a good segue, for us. I figured if I'm going to do this show, you got to make it personal. It can't just be like, well, I'm talking about it. As a therapist, I always find that when you make things more personal, it makes it more salient and real. And I think it's interesting how all of our lives are different, but when we're honest and we talk about things, it resonates with people. And so I invited one of my best friends on the show, the man that literally I credit to basically getting my head off my ass. Mr. Andy Leatherman is going to be joining us here right now, and we're gonna have a good conversation.
Are you there, Andy? Andy? Oh, here we go. I was trying to call him there.
We thought Andy was there, but
hey, I thought he was. That's all right.
Andy's kind of special.
Yeah, so have him call in on the line that you gave him earlier. And is he there?
I am here.
Hello, Andy. See, why do you gotta sit there and have a little delay there? We're trying to make it look like we're really nice and polished here, and we gotta have a 5-second delay, and it's like, well, Andy will be calling in. Maybe he doesn't exist. I don't know.
Right. Hopefully, what we can do is we can look back at this first episode here, on the 100th or the 200th episode, and you can think, wow, look at the crew production, like The Simpsons. You look back at the season 1 of The Simpsons, and it looks like a bunch of kindergartners drew it. Maybe we can do the same thing. Maybe you'll have some kind of studio that you can you can look back and say, wow, look how far we came.
By that point, by that point, my son will be 4. So yeah, totally. I can give him $10 and write it off on taxes.
There you go.
Well, Andy, my man, thank you for coming on the show. I totally built you up. I literally credited you for the man that turned my life around. I mean, how does that feel to know Michael Devine and everything who he's become, or really not become, is because of you?
It's a lot of responsibility. And I'll take credit if you actually do something with yourself. But if you fail, I'm just going to say I never knew that man. He was quiet and kept to himself, as far as I know.
You knew it was going to happen, basically. It's like, well, if he screwed up, well, I knew Mike was going to screw up. I mean, he's an asshole a little bit. But if he's successful, I will take complete credit for it, and I expect some type of shout out. So you set yourself up nicely, Andy. That's why you're my friend. You play both sides of the card. It suits you well. But but my man, thank you so much for coming on the show. It's kind of when I was kind of really approaching this first show, I was really trying to think hey, what's the best way of doing this? And I was thinking, hey, I want to set the stage for why we're doing this. Mm-hmm. And I was, I grew up, and Andy, me and all my friends, to give a little backstory, we've all known each other for a very long time. I mean, hell, my best friend, Bill, I've known him since I was 6 years old. So I've known him for, 30 some odd years. Andy and I, it was Oh God, it was ceramics class, sophomore year of high school, wasn't it?
Yeah, I've known Mike Devine here long enough that I keep a note in my front pocket in case of my untimely death. It just says that Mike Devine did it. So somewhere to happen to me, it'll just keep things interesting.
And so like, so that's the type of relationship we have, and so the thing is you got to look at, we've all been friends for a really long time. And, it was interesting. I left for grad school in 2003, and it was a real tough decision because this is everybody who I knew. I never had any brothers. A lot of us were all the younger siblings of everybody. And so we were all like family, brothers. I mean, Andy is the type of guy that would literally come over to the house and he would just start an argument for no reason. Like he would literally just completely he would make fun of, like, I'm a big Mets fan, Eagles fan. And he would just sit there and go, "Hey, Mike, who's your favorite team?" I'm like, "Well, it's the Mets." He goes, "The Mets suck. I'm going to give you 17 reasons why the Mets suck." So that's the type of relationship we had. We purposely goad each other, but we were brothers. Even if we went too far with something, we always had the ability to kind of sweep underneath the rug and realize, hey, life is a lot more important than just some bullshit. I mean, heck, there's even situations where, we had people, maybe the timing was a little suspect, of people maybe picking up on someone else's girlfriend, maybe before, maybe after they broke up, who knows. But even that was not enough to bring a wedge between any of us. We always got over it. But what's amazing, not amazing, what's screwed up is that a lot of that's kind of changed now. If you really think about it, put in perspective of someone could have maybe had suspect with putting the moves on someone else's girl. That wasn't enough to kind of cut somebody off. But in the last, Andy, what do you say, about 3 years, we started noticing a schism, like in a group where some people really can't talk to each other, or if someone so is going to be at this party, well, then they can't come over, or Facebook defriending. I'd love to hear you talk about that because I wasn't here for any of that. I came kind of after the fact, and I think I even took it upon myself to try to be the guy that bridged everyone together, like the therapist that I am. Help me, and for the listeners, as almost like a case study of what started happening when and during the election, and what did you start noticing of how those schisms started?
Yeah, that's a really good question. First off, you kind of hit on it, is that we have a very tight-knit group of friends, and we've all known each other for a very long time. That's kind of unusual. Even some of us have gone on into vastly different careers, but we have a really big group of friends that we've had known each other for such a long time. And you kind of hit on having maybe the timing of relationships didn't work out with other girls. We overcame that. We wrecked each other's cars. We overcame that. Some of us, accuse other people of doing God knows what. We overcame all that stuff. And we still talk to each other to this day. And it was really interesting is in the last 3 or 4 years, especially, you could really start to identify it during the 2016 election. People got very, very defensive and very argumentative. And it really started to put a schism into a lot of relationships that have weathered a lot of storms. And for something that an outside force such as that election to come in between friendships, you'd think that we had matured past that or grown past, something as really as trivial as it is, those elections. I wouldn't say it's trivial, but something such an outside outlier that really doesn't impact anyone on a day-to-day basis, how that event was able to tear apart relationships. I've given a lot of thought, and I'm not going to be able to tell you anything new or groundbreaking when it comes to my reasoning and rationale as to why this happened. But I think it's a couple different things. I really do think that social media, Facebook phenomenon has really thrown a monkey wrench into everything. People are using social media and people are using Facebook to reaffirm their beliefs in a way that I really haven't seen before in anything else. They're using those platforms to gain ideas and believe in ideas that they never had before. And people are becoming different humans than what they were in a way. We have a friend, a longtime friend of mine, I've known since the 8th grade. He really had no interest in politics. I didn't even know he could spell the word Republican, let alone vote for one. But the last 3 years, this man has become vicious on social media. I never even knew that he could. I never even knew that he was even interested in politics. I had no idea. But yet now I can identify him as the most right-wing person that I probably know. He says things on Facebook that nobody would say to another human being in person, and that's part of the problem. And that's put a lot of strain in relationships. We have friends that won't be in the same room with him. So it's kind of like we're back in the 7th grade again, where we're like, we're all like a bunch of, prepubescent 7th graders. Like, I won't go here if so-and-so is here, and I won't go here if so-and-so is here. And the rest of us in the middle who, like to think that we kept our heads, just roll our eyes like, what have we come to? We're having to like go through all this again, where people won't even talk to each other because of these problems.
And what's crazy, and Andy, thank you so much for that, because I could not have said it any better myself, is that the stark contrast of where we were and where we're at now. And I'm not gonna lie, it really made me sad, because I remember when I made the decision to move back, one of the things I was so excited about was, hey, we're getting a band back together. I think literally that was my text to you guys when we made a decision to move, like, we're getting the band back together, and only to realize that, well, the band's like Pink Floyd. Roger Waters and Dave Gilmour aren't talking anymore.
Right.
And it was shocking to me. And I think where I got even a little more frustrated is that I think everyone knows, like, I'm a pretty neutral guy. I mean, yeah, I think at some points in life, maybe leaning a little more liberal, but I think as I become more of a business owner and gotten older, I've become a little more conservative. And in trying to have conversations with certain people where the argument is so primed for, like, this is what you believe in. It's like, I didn't even vote for that person.
Right.
I don't even watch that news source. It's like, I couldn't even get out a word without somebody having some retort, some type of response right off the bat. And it's like, what do you do with that? And I'm trained to diffuse that. And I'm sitting there going, if this is what's going on around the country, does anyone else stand any chance of diffusing and having those discussions?
Yeah, the problem is we don't have those discussions anymore. It's all one-liners, and it's all arguments. Like, people aren't even wanting to understand or debate an idea. People are just trying to validate their own ideas through arguments. And like I say this about memes. You mentioned memes earlier in the show. To me, memes are just the digital age's version of bumper stickers. Let's try and oversimplify a massive, complex socioeconomic problem in one fragmented sentence over top of a pirated image. That's all a meme is. That's all it is. And we try and like send somebody a meme that validates our entire platform in one half a sentence. You can't do that. Like, if you even try to go back and ask them what they really think about something or how they really think about it, you're just starting an argument that you can't win, no matter who's right or wrong, or what's the value of the debate in the first place. All you're doing is starting a new argument. It kind of leads into another thing I saw in our group of friends, trying to tie back to what you brought me on for, is we had a situation where, somebody posted a comment about Melania Trump online on Facebook, and within about 6 nanoseconds, 2 people were chiming in on each side of the debate on about what she said, and before you knew it, we had like a battle royale going on Facebook in the middle of the day. Now, everyone's supposed to be at work, doing actual jobs and living their actual lives, but yet here we are on Facebook. Everyone's just chiming back and forth, and within a matter of what it felt like one afternoon on a Thursday, 20 years of friendships had just unraveled into, I'm blocking you, well, I'm blocking you, well, I'm blocking you. So everyone started blocking each other.
This
on Facebook.
Is why I block people.
Comment. I rarely even get on Facebook anymore. I unfollow everybody. I follow like 3 things. I follow Jerry Garcia, The Grateful Dead, and Pearl Jam on Facebook.
Nice.
That's it.
One of those things is dead.
But that's like the crazy thing is that, like, Andy's like me. I literally, up until I started, really doing this radio thing, I literally was never on Facebook. And to all of a sudden, like, when I start, I feel like it's almost like merging onto the highway. I'm going like 20. Everyone's going like 150. And it's like, holy shit. Like, what is going on here? And you tie that on top of that, I feel like I missed out on almost like, I don't know, 2-3 years of events with our Fens group. And it is shocking. It really, really was.
The term I have heard more than anything else amongst people who I have talked to is that, number one, just so you know, we're apparently unhip. All the kids are into the Twitters now. They're all into the Twitters, and the reason is because they feel as though they can scream into the void.
Yep.
And if you really examine that statement, I think we get to the heart of a lot of the reason why this show started. Yep. Number one, like if you're screaming, you're either in pain or you're angry at something. Why do you feel as though you're screaming into the void?
Right.
And that's when it goes back down to what I learned at that Trump rally. People do not feel heard, and they are searching for anything and everything to feel heard. And I think what's happened with this, I guess, political tribalism maybe is a better, kind of word for it, is that it's family now. You believe what I believe, and then I'm going to fight you fiercely and defend. So you attack me, you attack everybody. You attack my guy, you're attacking me, basically. And I feel heard. We all are angry, and I feel heard. And then the problem is then the other side is going, you're an idiot. You're being used. They don't really care about you. You're a moron. I'm going to give you 17 reasons why you're a moron. Andy, you know something about that logic. Right. And then the other side's going, well, you don't get it. You're this, you're that, you're the, and then that's what we kind of get into. But the fucked up thing is, like, guess what, guys? I think a lot of them don't give a shit about us. You know what they give a shit about? They give a shit about us arguing about this, because while we're arguing, they're doing what it is that they want to do. The only way that they win is by doing that. And when you cut away all the bullshit of politics and ask people, what do you think? What do you feel? What are your experiences like? Mysteriously, we all feel the same way.
I couldn't agree more. You heard me use the term before. This to me is nothing but political prestidigitation. It is sleight of hand. It is absolutely distraction. While you look over here, something else is going on.
Mm-hmm. And I think what's also been really difficult, and Andy, you and I, what's interesting, because Andy and I, of all of our friends group, Andy and I are the ones that probably did the most amount of college. And so it's not that, Andy and I are smarter than everybody, because frankly, if we said that, they'd probably make fun of us and make us feel like idiots. So it's just simply we have a different type of education. And I think we used to be able to have those conversations. Like, Andy, remember, like, it'd be me, you, and, well, I'm not going to say people's names, but what we're talking about. We'd be able to go to the bar. We'd be able to sit at home. We'd be watching Raw. We'd be at the filler. And we would actually have legitimate debates. Right. Now, given we were young, so probably our understanding of the bigger picture was probably a little bit, off. But I just remember we were able to have those in-depth conversations. But I don't know if you feel the same way, but what I feel now is that the second we start going into, like, fact, it's almost like that intellectual understanding, that deeper understanding, it's almost like we're made fun of, almost like there's something wrong with us, that it's almost like we're putting, I don't know, it's a weird dynamic that I've kind of noticed. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I think you hit on something. I think we both did our undergrad at Otterbein, now university, in good old Westerville, Ohio. As a history major, you were taught right out of the gate that whatever you think doesn't matter. Whatever you say has to be supported. We had to use references, and back in my day, you couldn't use the internet. It had to be a book. It had to be a published journal. It had to be something tangible. So if you said something, you had to have a source to back it up. Nobody cared about your opinion if you couldn't reference it or point to someone else who supports that theory. That's lost today. Like, because of the way information's now disseminated out, anybody can be a journalist. Anybody can be online with their own agenda. Thanks, because of the information superhighway, if that term's even still used, everybody is a public policy wonk. Everybody thinks they have a handle on public policy. Everyone thinks they are just versed in legislative matters. And the reality is that they're not. Everything they have is most people just sit and regurgitate information they've heard on a show, a TV show, or on a news channel, and they don't have anything to support it. That's just because they're regurgitating out things that they've been told and they've been told to say. But if you ask them, if you start peeling back just a single layer, asking the right questions, there's nothing there that can support what they're saying. It's just they just take the information, the weak information they find on these platforms, and they just regurgitate it, and it causes a lot of problems.
And I think what's even more kind of frustrating is that the error that we've kind of gotten into now is that somebody can say something, and I didn't say it. But no, I have you on tape saying it. I didn't say that.
Today?
It's like, what do you do with that? Yeah, like, what do you do with that? Like, literally, what do you say when you're literally calling somebody out on something? Like, I didn't say that. That wasn't me.
Right. I saw that today when Elizabeth Warren, released her DNA analysis. They asked Trump about it, and he says that I never said that. Well, it's on video. I watched the video. I saw the transcript.
Yeah. It's there.
Within minutes, you can scroll through your Twitter feed and find these people defending Donald Trump's stance that he didn't say it, or that's not what he meant. And it's like, are you? I mean, it can't be any more clear of what was said. I mean, the man was on TV, saying this out loud to other people. Like, I don't understand where the disconnect is here. But again, people will hear what they want to hear, and people will say what they want to say.
And that's what's even more scary is that it really isn't about what you hear anymore, because you've even seen some overtures of, well, maybe that was dubbed. Maybe, there is some technology out there that can kind of dub people's voices over that. And so maybe that isn't even really what you heard. And we really are in a post-facts reality. And so when you're trying to argue fact with, quote unquote fact, it really doesn't matter anymore. And then if anything, when you try to bring up the fact, it's almost like you're trying to be an intellectual, and you almost get like a judgment on it. And that's what I think has to stop. Whether or not that is social media, whether or not that is a president, a politician, a media, we have to sit there and take that step back and go, okay, so this is what we're all experiencing. This is what everybody is reporting. So what can we do to start having those conversations again? How can we start understanding what is fact, what is knowledge, and start teaching people like, hey, it's okay to think a little differently. What do you base that on? And it not being an attack. I think, Andy, to your point of it seems like anytime we bring up something, it's immediately met with a fierce backlash. At what point did it become a bad thing to disagree with somebody and it become an attack? And I think that's where it starts. How do I respectfully disagree? How do I go, hey, listen, this is what I believe. This is what I base that on. Help me understand what you believe. And hey, why is it that we view this thing differently?
I thought about that today, because when you and I talked earlier about that and about some of the thoughts and questions that we were going to go over today. And I really thought, how do you start that conversation? And I think one thing that a lot of us miss out on and kind of lost sight of is that we really all, both sides, Republicans, Democrats, the socialists, the communists, the fascists, everybody in this country wants the same thing.
Yep.
Security and success for the country. We all want the same end goal. All we're really fighting about is how we get there. We all want to be in the same spot. We all want to be secure, and we all want to be prosperous. We're arguing about the route to get there. That's what we're really arguing about. I think we need to regain sight of what we're really trying to do here. I mean, people who say, "Oh, well, the Democrats are looking to destroy the country." No, they're not. And the people who say the Republicans are trying to destroy the country. No, they're not. They're looking for the same thing. They want their families to be safe, and they want to be in a country that's secure. That's what we're looking for. I think we just need to level set, hit the reset button and start over and work from there. Everyone has a different idea and different travel way. They can use Waze, they can use Google Maps or Apple Maps to get there, but we're all going to the same destination. We really need to use that dirty word compromise. We need to start looking at other common things that we have together, and go from there. I think we lose sight of that. We all jump on each other's throats so fast to defend our point that we lose, the idea of what that point is actually for. It's to be successful and safe. That's what everybody really wants in life.
And the thing is, like, it almost seems like when especially on social media, and we keep beating a dead horse on this, but that's the whole point of today's show, is that the role of social media. Apparently, glue, I guess. Are they really? I don't even know if they're made out of glue, but
best to tenderize them before you make them into glue.
Right.
But, like, when we look at this country, and it's an arranged marriage. Think about, like, of all of our listeners out there, how many of you guys are married or in relationships, and how many of you have to compromise to make that marriage work? Of course, you pick people to marry that you think you're aligned with, but even when you pick people that you're aligned with, we disagree and we compromise because we're all moving towards the same goal. Ironically, that's where a lot of times relationships break down, is when one person is feeling that the other person, maybe nefariously or again, is not moving, is not aligned with them, or not maybe looking out for their best interest, but they're individual. And so I think if that's in a relationship that we pick, our Congress and our Senate and our government is an arranged marriage. It was set up that way on purpose by the founding fathers to make us kind of compromise. And there's always been disagreements. There's always been these issues. But the reality is that we have to find ways of compromising. But the general sense that I get is that the political parties are not playing to compromise and govern. I've said this before, is that I get a sense that each side is playing to win. And it's no more apparent than I can't do what I know is best for the country to compromise, because either A, they're going to use it against me, or B, we might lose. And the only way this country loses is if each party is only making decisions for what's best for them. And at what point do you sit there and go, listen, you guys are not going to win every single House seat. You're not going to win every Senate seat. The 50% of this country that is liberal or Democrat, or liberal or Republican, is not going to leave the country or just die. And that's where I look at, with all these memes and all, it's like, what is the purpose? What is the point? And I challenge all my listeners, what is the point of making these comments? Because if we're so angry because things are so messed up, do we honestly feel as though we're going to get to where it is that we need to go by hating each other even more? And let's be honest, folks. Our politicians in the media is not going to step up and do it themselves. No. It is completely on us. And I know it's difficult. You hear Andy and I talking about within our own friends group how tough it is. You've heard me talk about on our social media, me trying to mess around with wording things differently, and I'm trained to do it. But the reality is we have no other choice. We're all here together. And if we don't start taking actions in our own hand, not like in a call to arms, but in a, hey guys, maybe we need to work together. Right. And we're not going to solve anything. And it's not us anymore, guys. It's our families. It's our children. It affects everything. And, guys, we used to be the country. Literally, we had a challenge by John F. Kennedy to land a man on the moon, and we did it. This is a country that used to accomplish things and build things and do things, and now we're just a country of duct tape and sweeping things underneath the rug and blaming the other side when it doesn't get done. If we're talking about being patriots, we're talking about how awesome our country is. How awesome can our country be if we can't even communicate, where half the country feels as though the other side is basically the enemy and trying to basically bring the country down?
Yeah. No, I agree. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Ian.
Oh, I agree with you 100%. If you go back and look at some of the most successful presidencies that we've had, they've all been based on compromise. Nobody has taken the route we're seeing today, where there is no compromise. Everyone's it's either you're right or wrong. We really haven't seen successful presidencies operate under that model. The most successful presidencies have been based upon when the White House and the executive branch reaches out to the opposite party. When Bill Clinton balanced the budget in the late 90s, I mean, that's a Herculean feat for our federal government to balance the budget. That wasn't done with a Democratic Congress. It was done with John Kasich in Congress with the Republican-held Congress. Those two got together, compromised on that budget, and balanced it. That feat alone is something we shall look back on and take note of how that was comprised, what that was comprised of. You don't see that often. There's multiple examples about how the two sides have come together and worked together for a common goal and been successful. There's the amount of times that happened greatly outweigh the amount of times that one side has tried to strong arm the other. That very, very, very seldomly works.
Yeah. And then you also sit there and wonder that if you were to ask any of these congressmen of, hey, why don't you compromise? Because things are so bad, you almost feel as though it's almost like a death knell that, well, it's either going to be used against me by my own party, because that's the way the polarization is now. If you're a regular Democrat, well, then a regular Democrat is almost like, well, you're not you're not Democrat enough. If you're not far right, you're not Republican enough. And it almost seems like you open yourself up to be voted out, or you open yourself up to be, if I leave $20 on the table and just trust that no one else is going to take it, I'm a schmuck. People are just going to take it, and it's very Machiavellian, and that's where I look at it. That's a dynamic they're stuck into. Once again, everything reverts back to the people. They go off of what we do. And if we demand something different, if we demand facts, if we demand compromise, if we demand an actual open discussion, they will change. It's a symbiotic relationship, and we've seemed to have forgotten that we have the ability to do that. I'm willing to bet if it could be 3 months from now, if everybody changed the debate and demanded something different, I'm willing to bet every discussion during these midterm elections would be radically different. They're simply going off of us. And so it's easy to blame the media. It's easy to blame the politicians. But at what point do we sit there and go, all right, maybe the responsibility is on us, and maybe we should be looking in the mirror and going, we have all the power in the world, but we're not exercising it because it's tough, maybe because we don't want to. I mean, what do you guys think? Maybe it's my soapbox, but as Americans, when you're hearing me say that, like, am I being naive? Do you think that's really even possible?
It's possible. It's gonna be hard to get there. You'd have to. I feel like we still unbelievably or still need more trigger moments to make that happen. I think the powers that be, the political system we have now, these people want us to be tied up with our internal fighting. It's like, religion used to be the opium of the masses, they say. Now it's almost like politics is the opium of the masses. As long as we bicker online and bicker amongst ourselves, we can't collectively make any real possible tangible change to the system that we see fit.
Yeah. Chris, what are your thoughts, man?
I would expound upon the Machiavelli just a little bit. I notice y'all both made Machiavellian points there. I'd go a step further and say, when you remove God, you end up with politics. When the discussion is no longer about something greater than yourself, beyond yourself, that you have some kind of accountability to, you get lost real quick. And that's any society. And I think we've definitely hit a point, whether that's God, whether that's Gaia, whether it's the universe, whether it's a good vibe, like Dakina, I don't care. Like, the question is, are you focusing on something greater than yourself in life? Are you putting effort? I posted the other day that I no longer want to surround myself with anything but constructive people.
Yeah.
That's just my promise to myself.
Yeah.
If you aren't busy trying to do something in the world, I don't care what your job is every day. If you aren't busy trying to have a real conversation in the world, something like that, I appreciate you. good on you, but I just don't have the time right now.
Yeah, my wife kind of taught me the same thing.
I just don't have. Ain't nobody got time for that.
Yeah, we don't have a lot of time on this planet, so she doesn't waste her time with unconstructive people or people who are just going to waste her time. Like, my day is valuable, my time is valuable. You know, I'm not going to let somebody steal the one thing I have control of, which is my time.
Yep.
But let me know how that goes. Eliminating non-constructive people, especially on social media. That should be a fun experiment.
And that's where I look at the power of a show like this, is that it's about, you know, instead of running away from it, it's about actually running head first into it almost.
Well, yeah, and it's the fact of, like my spiritual director used to teach me many, many years ago, you are accountable for your decision. You're accountable for your decision, whether your decision is indecision, what have you. Even the great Neil Peart wrote that. He who chooses not to decide still has made a choice. Free Will by Rush. But it's the fact of, eventually, if you adopt that, you'll start seeing things from a different point of view, and you'll really start to get that concept of, like he used to tell me all the time, so how's that working out for you? You know? Like, and it was tough love. It was harsh love. Like you were saying earlier, Mike, like as a therapist, how do I not just give them that tough love and just pull it off like a Band-Aid and go, you know, you're your own problem here, right?
And that's
like, nobody's made this series of decisions for you.
And that's where I think where I life, everything is about learning. And I think sometimes we get enamored with our own thoughts, our own ideas, the sound of our own voice. And one of the things I think I've kind of realized is that change, you know, has to be facilitated, but change also has to be taken into account of how you can word things in a way that people can hear it and when they're ready to hear it. And I think my past attempts, and I think maybe in a messed up way, what my agent was trying to tell me is that you just can't smack somebody across the face with truth, because it's just not going to go across. And I think that's what's happening nowadays, is that you're wrong, I'm right, I'm going to smack you with some truth, even though, as Andy said, that truth a lot of times is not really actual truth, but you believe it to be truth. But that's the key. If somebody believes that's their reality, that's their truth, the second we deny it, the second we tell them it's wrong, they stop listening. So instead of rejecting their truth, telling them their truth is wrong, how about we embrace their truth? We help understand their truth, and we help them understand our truth, and mysteriously we start hearing each other again. We start listening to each other again. And that is what I look at is what our role is, because we don't have the ability to go back into our holes anymore. We don't have the ability. If anyone is listening to the show, they're obviously listening to the show because they all realize the same thing. But we know change is going to be tough. We know there's going to be a lot of resistance. There's going to be some difficult conversations, but it all comes down to one thing. Do we have a choice? If we see the way things are going and we all feel exactly the same way, well, then we really don't have a choice. And so, you know, and that's what this show is about. The show is an attempt to start doing that again. So what my challenge to everybody out there right now, anybody who is listening to this show, anyone that cares about this country as much as I do, about all of us do, then I challenge you to go on Facebook. Look at people who are posting things that maybe think differently than you. And instead of, you know, maybe a thumbs down comment, maybe instead of just ignoring it, simply ask them why they believe that. Ask them what their viewpoints are, what they're feeling, what are they trying to do. Ask them even about, you know, what a solution or a compromise is. And let's start changing that debate, changing that discussion. Let's see what happens. I encourage every one of you, get involved. I want to hear about what happens. I want to hear about what that discussion is basically about. So you can message us, Michael at graymattersradio.com. Go on our Facebook at Gray Matters Radio, Twitter. And I want to hear what your experiences like, what they were, and was it what you expected? Was it different? we all have to change things. We all have to get our hands dirty. There's no other way of looking at it. I'm willing to listen. The people I imagine listening to the show are willing to listen. So let's start bringing more people in and see if we can all listen to each other and see where we kind of go. Because the way I look at it, what do we have to lose? It's all kind of a bit of a shit show right now anyway. So it's not like it can get any worse. I mean, so that's my thoughts. Andy, any closing thoughts as to just, what you would like people to hear, just as Joe Everyman, just a regular guy, not an expert on anything but just life. Is there anything else that you would like for people just to understand, or any last little comments? Even if it's Mike, I still think you're an asshole.
Well, obviously, you are an asshole, clearly. And
I am. I mean, I'm a likable asshole, aren't I?
Yeah, and the Mets are terrible. And
they're bad. They're bad.
Hundreds of reasons why. But, I hope the people, the message they get from this show is that it's okay to have a real conversation and have a real understanding of other people's viewpoints. When you fail to understand someone else's side of the story, you dehumanize them, and you kind of make them into immaterial ideas that you kind of discard like the trash. So I think once you start to understand people, you can start to gain common ground with them. And we all are looking for the same goal. I mean, we all want to be safe and secure and prosperous. And I think we really are looking for the same thing. We're just trying to get there in different ways or speaking a different language about it. And I think the more we learn about the other path, the other direction, I think the better off we'll all be.
Well said. Chris, any last words?
Like I said earlier, the main thing I look at is the first conversation that we had whenever you contacted me originally, which was what do we do to open conversation? What do we do to get people to start listening, to start understanding, to start making an actual effort to be open, to not let things like confirmation bias get in the way, where when you hear competing information to your paradigm, that you don't just call in a napalm strike on the bridge you're standing on. And I've seen that happen to friends of mine. I've seen it happen in friendships where it's like, are you serious right now? It just got to that point. It really just got to that point where you couldn't even say one more word to the person. And that's when you put it in that terminology, when you make people think about it in that way, it can really kind of make them be like, oh, wait a minute, yeah, I don't want to get horrible things involved, because why would you want to burn the bridge you're standing on? Why would you it's not that you're just breaking the connection, it's that you're breaking your connection to begin with. Your connection to the real world, your connection to how you interact and how you filter and take in the world.
Wow, well said. And that's that's just a general sense of where I think we all feel like we're all going to the same spot. But it's in our power to kind of change it, and that's, for episode 1 of Gray Matters Radio. And this is really merely serving as a mission statement, where if you're hearing what we're talking about and it resonates with you and you're like, yeah, like someone else feels the same way that I do. If you're listening to the show and you're like, no, like that is absolutely right. I feel the same frustration. It doesn't matter if you're right, you're on the left side. It don't matter. If you're hearing what we're saying and it's like, yes, then this show is for you. This show is about a movement. This show is about empowerment. What we're going to attempt to do in these weeks moving forward is now start having these discussions. It's easy to have a show where it's a mission statement, where this is what we're trying to do and this is what our base is. It's a whole other ball of yarn where we're going to start diving into these topics, and we're not going to shy away. Well, that's going to be a hot button topic. I know my wife is probably going to be looking at some of the topics I'm bringing up. Like, are you sure you want to do that? I mean, you don't want to ruin your show in the first month, but it's like, no, we're going to do that because that's just frankly the discussion that we need to kind of have. And so in the upcoming episodes of the show, we're going to dive into healthcare, racism. We're going to start talking about just mental health issues, addiction, pretty much every major social, psychological issue that we can't talk about with each other outside of here. We're going to hit it. We're not going to hit it from an angle of I'm right, you're wrong. No, we're going to talk about it from a 360-degree angle. We're actually going to talk to people that are actually out there and doing it. That way, it's not a matter of, hey, as my dad always taught me, whenever I asked him his opinion of something, he goes, hey, well, read this. Instilling to me of, hey, I can trust that you're going to make your own decision, but what's important is that you read, know where to read the right information, and you form your own opinion based upon that. And maybe other news people don't. If you watch any other media show, any other big radio show, they're going to be telling you this is what you need to believe, and really beat in your head when you don't believe that. I have much greater faith in you. As a clinician, I've been in the trenches there with lots of you, and I know you can make the right decision. I've made a living out of helping you look at the right information without telling you what to believe. And if it works in a therapy room, it will work as a country. I trust that you can hear the right information, and there's no wrong decision. There's no wrong opinion as long as it's based upon your own thought, the right information. And I want this show to be about a movement. This is much bigger than myself. And maybe it's me building myself up, but I promise you it isn't. I wouldn't be doing this if I did not think that this show can really be a movement where we can all really start making that change. And I really, really think we can. Just having these conversations with people and seeing the response by people is that I know we all feel the same way. So now it's time to put in action. So I thank every single one of you for joining me. I thank Chris and HC Universal Network for putting your faith in me.
Absolutely.
And giving me the opportunity. Andy, my man, thank you for coming on the show, being one of my first guests, and for really being the guy that got my head off my ass. All my friends, all my family, everybody who has put up with me and all my questions and all my eccentricities, because I think deep down everybody knows I'm trying to help, which is probably why I can get away with what it is that I am. Even all the listeners that have tuned in, people, they know me, maybe people that don't know me, maybe, some random share of, hey, you need to listen to this guy. Give the show a chance. If you care, where else can you listen to people talking about real change, powering the people? That's what we're going to be doing here. I'm going to suck on some of these shows. I'm not going to lie. I'm great when I'm a guest. I don't know how I'm going to do as a host, but the thing is, though, sometimes we're going to screw up, and I think it's okay. We're going to get better at it. We're going to have better guests. Andy, you're a good guest, but let's be honest. We'll probably have better. It's cool. You can handle it. You're a big.
I just expect to be back for the 100th show, and also the best of clip show.
Oh gosh, yes. I think Andy needs to be a recurring guest. Andy, by the way, guys, Andy knows his shit. This guy literally, he will.
Oh, he's been great.
Oh, Andy can argue anyone under the table in the most ridiculous, annoying way. He has a way of being a complete dick. My wife goes, man, he's a real asshole, but you like him for some reason. I don't know how you pulled it off, my man. It's impressive, and it translates well in the air. So if I can, I'm going to try to keep stealing Andy to be a regular kind of guest on here. We'll see how he likes it, But everybody, thank you so much for joining us, and I think this is going to be fun. I encourage. I want to hear everyone's comments. I really want you guys to be part of this show, and the show can only be possible with your feedback, your experiences, because that's what I want the show to be about. It's about making our voices heard, and the only way it's going to be heard if we talk. But we are going to talk in a way where we can hear each other. So if it's on our Facebook page, I want you to give your opinion, but I want your opinion. We're not going to attack people. We are going to model how we want people to discuss these topics, no matter how divisive it is. There is no wrong opinion. But that's what this thing can be. So with that, I thank everybody for joining us tonight. We'll be back next week. 5 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, Monday night. And I hope you all join me. So thank everyone so much. Andy, Chris.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we will chat again later. Good evening.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Gray Matters Radio with Michael Devine. For more episodes and information, visit us online at graymattersradio.com. Join the conversation by following Gray Matters Radio on Facebook and Twitter. Gray Matters Radio is a proud member of the HC Universal Network family of podcasts. For more live episodes of this and other great shows, download the free HC Universal Network app at hcuniversalnetwork.com. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, remember, think about the gray.